So as many investors around the world wait for the possibility of a China government massive stimulus package to trigger a turnaround for China economic, this may not happen. So why is it so? I think we have to look back to the China 2008 economic stimulus plan to fully understand why China policymaker may not want to go for a big stimulus plan this time round. So back then on 9 November 2008, the State Councilor of the People's Republic of China announced that a big stimulus plan that was worth around 4 trillion yuan to minimize the impact on the 2008 global financial crisis and to revive China's economy. The China stimulus plan back then was welcomed by world leaders, as technically this plan not only helped China to boost her own economy, it also indirectly helped to stabilize the world economy that have suffered from the American subprime crisis of year 2008. Back then, the news of the China massive stimulus plan sent stock market up around the world and boost global investor confidence in the global economy, because investors and government around the world understand that part of this extra money supply from China's stimulus plan may push out demand in the global economy, because China, being the world's second largest economy, is closely interlinked with the global market. Basically, China's economic stimulus plan in 2008 may look quite successful in the short terms, because China's economic growth dropped to around 6% in year 2008 during the financial crisis. And after the stimulus plan was announced, China's economic growth recovered to more than 10% by the mid of year 2009. But in the long term, many experts and China government may feel that such a massive stimulus plan may help the economy in the short term, but it kind of postpone the problem and may create a bigger crisis or problem down the road. Why is it so? So you see, some experts blame China's stimulus package in year 2008 to indirectly cause a surge in China debts since 2009, especially among the China local province government and state-owned enterprise. It also indirectly creates China's next crisis, which China is handling now, the property market crisis. A big portion of the stimulus money went into pushing up China's property market until her property become extremely expensive, and the main reason why the China government decided to crack down on her property market a few years ago is that they understand that if they allow their property market to continue to rise out of control, many China citizens are not going to be able to own their own house, or they may struggle to pay their monthly home loan. China's economy may be sucked dry by her property market, as many of these China consumer disposable income may be sucked dry from buying and paying for their home, and that will leave them with little money for consumption, which can help to boost the domestic economic growth. China's population may also continue to decline, as most adults simply do not have that much of extra money to support their kid living expenses. If most of their money are used on their property, they may either have only one kid or have no kids. People who have a weaker financial power and can't afford a home and marriage may simply refuse to marry. More women in China may also refuse to marry or can't find suitable men that meet their minimum require or so-called standard, as many men are not able to afford to buy a property as their home if the price of the property go out of control. Let me give you some example of the China property market price. In year 2008, Shenzhen property market was only around 12,000 yuan per square meter. In year 2021, Shenzhen property market saw to more than 60,000 per square meter, 60,000. In Beijing, price for her property was around 10,000 yuan per square meter in year 2008. By around 2021, it was more than 40,000 yuan, 40,000 per square meter. So basically from year 2008, when China's massive stimulus plan was announced till year 2021, in just around 13 years time, China property price soared by more than 400% in many China cities. Now, can you imagine what may happen to China property price if the China government continue to use massive stimulus plan to try to revive her economic growth? Her property price may soar out of control and may create bigger social problem in the long terms. This is basically the main reason why China is trying to avoid using massive stimulus plan this time round. She wants to keep her property market under control, and she wants her people to have more disposable income so that they may consider having more babies in the future, and to prevent China population from declining. Population size is very important for China, as they want to focus on their own domestic market demand in the future, as she needs a massive domestic market size for her economic growth in the future. Moreover, as I mentioned in many of my previous videos, China is now going to focus more on high-end manufacturing for her economic growth. This is something that will not create pockets of bubble in her economic. It will not create the kind of problem that arise from her property bull market. It helps China to transit to a new economic growth with higher quality, less depend on the outside world and more on domestic demand, and also export more high-end products and service. We are seeing that China is now the undisputed global leader in most global high-end manufacturing and industrial, and China is moving in that direction to gain more market share in this area. For example, China have a dominating position in the global EV manufacturing. More than 60% of the global electrical vehicle car is now made in China. More than 17%, 70, of this EV car high-end battery now come from China. China also is the only nation in the world to own a space station by herself. That gives her tremendous opportunity to do technology research in the space that may benefit her technology and science advancement in the long run. And according to many experts, China Huawei may also have managed to build 5nm microchip by herself after Huawei Mate 60 was launched in year 2023. And moreover, China is also focusing on her Belt and Road projects, bringing more nations around the world on board to her economic game. She's pouring more money into the Belt and Road project, her bullet train system, and help to encourage the usage of China building program and infrastructure planning and projects for many nations around the world that indirectly help to promote the use of China yuan in the international market. And in the long terms, that may threaten the US dollar reserve currency status. Of course, all this above economic plan need time to see result, and China is playing the long games in the global economic great games against the American and the West. The other main reason why China refused to use massive stimulus to revive her economic growth this time round is that China have seen how the West and the American have accumulated huge amount of debts in the past few years for their economic growth and their stimulus plan. And this Western government are not really focusing on their manufacturing or high-end technology for growth. Most Western nation manufacturing industry are now hollow and set to continue to decline. The Western economic, especially the American, now heavily depend on debts and stimulus plan to rescue her economic and prevent them from entering a recession. In a way, these Western nations are just kicking the can down the road. No one, not even great nation in human history, managed to escape from the long-term economic problem or crisis that come along with massive debt. Eventually, the chicken will come home to roost, and you will have to face the music at the end of the day when your debt problem become unsustainable. Now, just look at the US economic growth and her budget deficit, and you will have a clearer picture on what I'm trying to say. US economic growth from around $25.5 trillion in year 2022 to around $26.8 trillion in year 2023. That was an increase of her economic size by around $1.3 trillion. At the same time, US run a budget deficit of around $1.7 trillion in year 2023. So we can see that technically, the American economic growth may have come from her budget deficit. the US government spending. And the return for her debt spending is lower than her economic growth. This may kind of look like a bad debts. Good debts are debts that help you to increase your wealth or growth at a bigger size than the debts itself. For example, the $1 that you borrow help you to generate $2 economic growth after paying off the interest rate, which may be a few percent. At the end of the day, overall, this $1 debts help you to generate more wealth, and hence this $1 debts is a good debts. But for the American in year 2023, the US $1.7 trillion budget deficit only generate $1.3 trillion of economic growth, and we still have not counted in the interest rate payment. So basically, this can be referred as being bad debts in a way. In the long run, this kind of debt is simply unsustainable, and the main reason why the American can continue with this debt game is that the US dollar is still the global reserve currency and is still in demand and widely used in the global trade and the global debt market. But this can't go on forever. As I mentioned earlier on, almost all great power in human history got destroyed by debts if they cannot control their debts. There are massive spending, and when they can't balance their budget in the long run. The global market may lose confidence in the US dollar if this debt accumulation continue to grow at a alarming speed. And the American is kind of behaving in this way. US debt increased from around $5.6 trillion in year 2000 to now of more than $34 trillion. And the American eventually may struggle to service a massive debt in the near future. Now, this is something that the China policy maker may want to avoid. They do not want to use that to kind of artificially pump up their economic, because that may create lots of problems and bubbles for their economic in the future. They are not looking to follow the American way of kicking the can down the roots. So that's the main reason why China is focusing on high-end manufacturing and high technology industrial and her domestic market for her future economic growth. This kind of economic structure may take a longer time to witness massive economic growth, but it is much more sustainable and may lead to a much more healthy economic in the long run. So the question over here is, does the American politician understand that they can't forever depend on budget deficit and debts to save the economic? You need real economic growth, not economic growth that is generated from debts. My personal view is that most American politicians and past presidents may understand that. But since the US politicians need good economic data and figure to actually help them to win their next election, they may be less motivated to change the American economic structure and, stop using debts to stimulate their economy. Because if they follow China economic plan that depend more on high-end manufacturing to grow their economic and stop using debts to grow their economic, in the short terms, the American economic growth may decline as it takes more time for China's style of economic plan to generate economic growth. On the other side, raising debts and printing more money into the economic offer the US politician a faster speed to generate growth in the economic. More welfare program and giving food stamp to her people may also help this politician to win more votes. So that may be the main reason why the American politician may continue to use debts, grow their economic, and the US debt problem may never be under control. It may lead to the destruction of the US economic in the long terms if they continue printing massive amount of money year after year, running budget deficit year after year. In other words, the US may default on her debts in the future, and that may lead to an end to the US dollar hegemony. No one knows when that may come, but as I mentioned earlier on, no great power in human history managed to prolong their power by using debts. Most of the time, they may get destroyed by their own overspending, wastage, and massive debt. So which one do you prefer? An economic that follow China's style of depending on high-end manufacturing and technology, or the American way of kind of maybe using debts, printing money to kind of boost out your economy? Which one you prefer? Please comment below and share with me. Please subscribe, share and like. Thanks for watching.